Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Wayne Hammond. Wayne has been working with the Alberta Mentoring Partnership for the last 3 years, and we've been really fortunate to have his focus on strength-based and looking at all the work that we're doing, and also his knowledge in terms of his experiences with mentoring. So I will pass it off to you.
Is that, can you hear me at the back? Great, great. I'm not going to wander with the mic because I tend to use my hands a lot, and they're videoing this, so they'll lose some sound if I start doing that. But it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and it's been an absolute pleasure working with the Alberta Mentoring Partnership. And as we've seen this project and relationship to community and organizations grow, it's amazing how many people and organizations out there have a passion around building this capacity of our younger generations and preparing them for the unique challenges that they're going to face in life as they move in through their developmental years of teenagers towards adulthood. Today I want to share some concepts with you. I make the assumption that you're already amazing people. You've already got amazing talents. You've got skill sets and knowledge. What I would like to talk to you today is about how you work with that and how that translates down into how a mentoring relationship could find expression in a way that moves away from that concept of at-risk kids and putting a healthy adult in their life. Sometimes that's a reality, but I really believe that all kids need significant adults in their lives. It's not just a particular group. Even for me as a parent, I've got a 10 and a 12-year-old. I am a mentoring influence in many ways for my children. And so what I'm talking about today is not just a model of practice, because I don't think strength-based practice is that. I think it's a way of life. It's a value system. It's a philosophy of how we see ourselves and how we see others. And that's going to change the way that you see people. It changes the way you ask questions. It changes the way you engage people. Because if you have a belief that people are at potential or at capacity, you're going to ask different questions. You're going to move away from, sounds like you've got a problem, could you talk to me about it, and maybe we can find a solution. That's more that prescribed model, that expert-driven model, as opposed to, I understand you made some really interesting choices today. I'd like to learn more about why you felt that was a good option. Because it sounds like you had the teachers in your school just spinning today. I think you have amazing skill sets because you seem to read people and know how to push their buttons in ways that I would never have thought of. Could you teach me that? It's a whole different way of engaging. And you know, if I woke up in the morning and I said to my wife, you know, I didn't really appreciate the meal you cooked last night. Not sure about the way that you are raising our kids. And, you know, how do you think that she might treat me that week? Matter of fact, for the next 6 months. But if I woke up and said, you know something, I really like the fact you're in my life. You really add to this picture of how we're working with our kids. You really invite us into a way of looking at life that I never even thought about. How do you think she's going to treat me? Well, when it gets to the mentoring relationship, it's no different. When we talk to kids or we talk to other people, how we start that conversation is going to set the agenda for how that relationship's going to go forward. So that's what I would like to talk to you a little bit about today and some of the principles behind it. And then we have this amazing opportunity later with Michael to talk about a framework, because Michael's inviting you into a way of saying, what's my role? What's the relationship that I need to develop here? And where do I need to be? Well, to me, in order to go there, you need a value system that's going to invite you to say, that's where I need to be. Because mentoring, in my mind, is not just a haphazard relationship. It's very purposeful. You want to build something that's actually going to take kids who may be missing something and adding it to their picture in such a way that they're in a position to start bringing those resources and natural relationships into their lives as they go through life. Mentoring is an opportunity to set the agenda for how kids are going to see life and move forward in life. That's why it's such a powerful concept. And it's one of those things where it doesn't necessarily need to be in a program. It's about relationships in family, communities, schools, and programs. And it's an amazing resource that I don't think we've tapped into very well. And that's why I think a lot of programs struggle about getting mentors. It's the same one over. If we need to expand this idea that everybody has a role, everybody has an influence on kids, and we're going to talk about it more specifically so that you have a way of thinking about it and a way of moving it forward. So please feel free to ask questions. I have a tendency to get up and start talking and sharing stories. So don't be afraid to interrupt, because we've been doing this to each other for the last 2 days. And so I appreciate if you would say, Wayne, what do you mean by that? Or I saw that, or this is what it means to me, okay? The AMP project has given a definition to mentoring, and it's the presence of a caring individual that provides young people with support, advice, friendship, reinforcement. And you know, these are the characteristics of a mentoring relationship. And, but you know, it doesn't necessarily mean to be formal. It could be informal, it could be natural, but these are the characteristics. Now in my life, as I said, I've got to practice what I preach. And this is my young lad. I've got 2 of them. I got a 10 and a 12-year-old, and I'm always amazed about genetics because, you know, we look at genetics as having some predictability. Well, anybody who's been a parent with multiple kids knows that genetics has nothing to do with that. Personalities come out. My oldest son, he's going to be a judge. I can't say anything. He'll never take anything I say for granted. I've got to prove myself, I've got to justify it, and I've got to give at least 3 supporting factors why I want him to do something. And then he'll give consideration to it, and then maybe he'll do it. My younger son is an experiential learner. He tries things, and then he comes back and reflects on it. And so he'll come to me and say, Dad, what happens to you when you eat a ladybug? Well, you know, he's not asking me about thinking about doing it. He's already done it, and he's afraid he's going to die. And so part of this process of mentoring, in my mind, is not about us just influencing young people. Strength-based practice talks about the concept that really mentoring is a journey. It's about sharing stories. You just happen to be maybe 20 years or 30 years down the road in a journey where the young person is starting that journey. And it's really about learning from each other. A true mentoring relationship is not just about, I'm going to help you or fix you. A true mentoring relationship, in my mind, is about, you're an amazing kid, and you've got some amazing things, and we're going to share stories in such a way that you actually own your own story, and you're going to start writing the next chapters of your life in a way that makes sense to you, that you're owning it and it's taking you on your journey. And I hope in many ways, even with my own 2 boys, that their journey goes beyond my journey. Ideally, what we want is people to embrace their passions and their strengths and their sense of purpose, because when they get that, they'll figure out how it fits to their role as a teacher, their role as a community citizen, their role as whatever. It's those initial things where they believe in themselves and pass that on to those who they have an influence on. So if starting the mentoring influence is about purposefulness, it will generate itself from those who we work with, and they will pass it on and pass it on. And really, to me, that's really about how we pass our values and where we want to go as a society. So the problem I think that we have in our society is that, you know, intuitively, this makes sense, doesn't it? How many here say, hey, I agree with everything you've said today, Wayne? Okay, we got half the audience. We're good. But the point is that do you practice it? It's one thing to say, yeah, I agree with this, but when push comes to shove, are you using this language? I'm catching myself all the time with people or with my own children or people that I have a relationship with and are mentoring. I have to catch myself of, am I inviting them to feel unique? Am I helping them to understand their strengths? Am I communicating in a way where it's inviting them to step outside their box and take challenges in constructive ways? So that's really the rub here. It may be, say, intuitively, Wayne, it makes, because I hear lots of people say, we're strength-based, or we're a strength-based organization. But when I go in and have an opportunity to hear their story, when they're faced a challenge, what do they default to? Do they default to believing in those they're working with, or do they default to, no, this is the behavior we're looking for. This is what we want you to see. And that's a challenge, because strength-based practice isn't so much worried about the outcomes, And yet, oftentimes, we're guided by outcomes, right? We need to do certain things in order to reach an outcome. I'm more interested in the process, because if the process is right, the outcomes look after themselves. And sometimes the outcomes find expression in ways we never even thought of. But that's the uniqueness of a strength-based perspective, is that you're inviting people into a creative process where they draw upon what they're doing. So the disconnect is then, if we believe in it, are we practicing it? And just a little vignette here to...
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, Mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
So that's what I want to ask you today. What are you thinking about? And I'm hoping by the end of our presentation that you're thinking about some of these basic principles in that framework that may give guidance and purposefulness to where you're going. I think that children and youth live up to what we believe in them. So how we describe them, how we use language around them. Like my background's a clinical psychologist, and so I was trained in the whole art of what's wrong with you. We have a DSM, that Diagnostic Statistical Manual. 40 years ago, we only had 40 categories, but we've gotten very good at it now. We've got over 400 categories with subcategories, and I even have categories to draw upon when I don't know what I'm talking about. And there's even a talk right now of actually bringing out another section to DSM where we're going to have a section on people being predisposed towards being the deficit model. So we're very good at this, and we've almost created a whole industry around it, right? Because how do we fund programs? We fund programs on what's wrong, right? Like I could write a proposal tomorrow on the amazing strengths of a community and kids, and things are really working well. And would I ever get funded for that? It's kind of like, why would we fund something that's not broken? Let's just let it exist. You know, we do marriage therapy, you know, and we study marriage therapy. What do we study in order to sort of teach people? We study all the messed up marriages and what should be different. We should be studying the amazing 10 marriages and using those as examples of what it should be like. This isn't any different. And so how we work with kids is so important, because it's my belief that kids don't change their value systems about who they are and what they think about themselves just because somebody in authority says this is the way you